Hello, everyone. Thank you for those. I can see some folks are joining and have been in the waiting room. So thanks for your patience and being here early. My name is Taylor Winchester. I am with Foundy, and most of you that are probably joining have seen or heard of me before via some of these past webinars. We'll give a few minutes to allow some other folks to kind of continue to roll in here and join the session. But if you want to drop a quick chat in the chat box or a quick note and let us know where you're tuning in from, it's always nice to see what part of the world folks are joining us from. I'll start it here with dropping mine in. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'll let these other panelists and speakers here introduce themselves more officially here in a few moments. Hey, Patrick from Denmark and Europe. Nice. Yeah, it's very, very kind of these folks to join us and share their time and time with us here today and talking a little bit about selling tickets. Many of I think I've expressed this to our speakers here, but we're obviously today talking a little bit about ticket strategies and selling tickets and promoting events. Many of the folks that might be joining could be Foundy users. They could also just be joining because they've seen this promoted. So some of them may not be working in full capacity around shows all the time, but I think it's a great opportunity for even some of our users that are more on the label and recorded side of the industry to understand just some of the strategies that could also help them with marketing music from a standpoint of what's happening on the live side of things and how it can impact and help also sell more product when you're talking about terms of marketing releases and physical products too. So, hey, there's Annalisa. I don't know how to add Mindy, but I can drop a link that she can register. Give me just a second. Let me find my link. Where did I store it? Okay, here we go. I will drop this in the chat here if anybody needs to share this with anybody else that wants to join. You can pass that link along. I, of course, had to wrap it in a Foundy Smart link. Yeah, why don't we get started with introductions while we wait on a few other folks to join. Chris, why don't you start us off there? I see somebody knows you there from Nashville.
Sure. Yeah, Chris Fairbank. I run the marketing for 888 Management out of the Nashville office. We have 30 some odd clients ranging pretty much every genre. About half of our roster is country, and then the other half is everything from folk, Americana, pop, punk, R&B, Christian, alternative, you name it. Yeah, so my job is really just to sell whatever our clients are trying to sell. So a big bulk of that is tickets, but also records, merchandise, brand partnerships, all of that good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Courtney, how about giving us a quick intro and background from where you're coming from there?
Sure thing. Thanks. So Courtney Barwick, I am the Director of Digital Marketing for Rockhouse Partners. Rockhouse Partners is essentially the in-house digital marketing team for eTix. So basically we exist as kind of a premium service for eTix clients to where we can work with them one-on-one, kind of like an agency in the sense of helping them with their marketing efforts. So talking Facebook ads, Google ads, analytics, tracking, email, SMS, kind of everything that we kind of do in this marketing space to help them ultimately sell more tickets online. And a core part of that too is helping them build up their audiences and build their database of people and fans of their venues and things like that. So we touch folks from, clubs to state fairs to casinos to haunted houses. We're kind of all over the place in terms of verticals, which keeps it really exciting. I think there are things that we learn from certain verticals that work well that we can kind of try out in other ones too. But I essentially oversee the digital advertising efforts that the Rock House team does on behalf of our clients.
Thank you for that, Courtney. And just to throw it out there, I was at ETICS conference back in September, and it was one of Courtney's panels that she presented on first-party data strategies that really kind of prompted this idea in my mind, like, hey, we haven't had a conversation around live marketing, live show marketing in a while. So I think it was only appropriate to start with making sure she was involved in this conversation, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But thank you for that, Courtney. And Tyler, how about a little bit from up there in New York where you're calling in from?
Yeah, I'm Tyler LaRocca. I'm the marketing director for the Capitol Theater in Garcias, which is a theater in Port Chester, New York, which is like, it's about 25 miles outside of New York City in Westchester County. And my job is to oversee all the marketing efforts from, most importantly, selling tickets to shows at the Capitol Theater in Garcias, which is our smaller room within the Cap. And also helping to, oversee the brand strategy and long-term success of the venue. But for the most part, my job is to sell tickets to the shows.
Just can you share what's the capacity of the two venues you're referencing?
So there's the Capitol Theater has two configurations. We can move seats in and out. So when we have a seated show, it's about 1,500 people. And when we have a general admission floor, it's about 1,950. And then Garcia's at the Capitol Theater is 250 capacity room.
Awesome. Yeah, I just thought that would be some good context for folks thinking about sizes. And we can talk a little bit about obviously different sizes of events throughout this conversation. I just dropped this in the chat, but for those that may not be looking at the chat, if anybody that is tuning in today has any questions throughout this conversation, obviously drop them in the chat. We may not be able to get to them immediately, but of course we'll save a few minutes. We'll try to answer them as we go, but of course can save a few minutes at the end to loop back and answer any questions or dig in a little bit further on any of these topics. So I think to start with, again, I mentioned that I was kind of inspired about the conversation around first party data strategies and really digital marketing in general. But I think what's come up a lot here over the last couple of years is the need for first party data. And I think in the music industry, sometimes we don't, those types of terms that are maybe more widely known across other industries when talking about digital marketing, sometimes we implement them a little bit later in the musical industry. So I thought this would be a good time to kind of start with, talking about what first party data is, maybe how some of you folks here on the call are using it already. And Courtney, I'd love to kind of just tee this up for you to kind of start with, because I know in the conversation at the ETICS conference, you were really honing in on a lot of the ways that you're capturing and using first-party data. But could you give just a little bit of background from, at least like at a high level for folks that maybe aren't, I imagine most people are pretty familiar, but just in case folks aren't familiar with what first-party data is.
Yeah, sure. There's definitely, I think that's a good, kind of sentiment and point to make. I feel like a lot of times, when we talk, marketing, sometimes there are recommendations and terms and things out there that don't really feel accessible for us kind of in the live event space. It feels something that's more centered for like e-commerce or like an online store or something like that. But I definitely think that there are some themes kind of in those places that can apply well to us. And I think one of those is kind of the concept of first party data. It sounds more complicated than it is. It's basically just data about your ticket buyers or potential ticket buyers that you're collecting. So this could be people that are subscribed to your email list. This could be people that have purchased tickets to events at your venue in the past. They've subscribed to SMS. There's kind of some, ways that you can leverage first party data similarly through like pixels, even though like thinking about like a Facebook pixel on your website, that's technically data that you've captured about those folks that you can then use in your marketing efforts to retarget, to optimize ads, and we can kind of get more into that stuff. But essentially that is what first party data at its core is. And I think, one of the things why I think why we're hearing this brought up more and more now is because a huge part of it is a lot of the privacy shifts that we've seen over the past few years with, Facebook and iOS 14.5 specifically, where people can ultimately opt out of tracking. And I think that historically, 5-6 years ago, we were in a position where it was really relatively easy to sell a ticket online through Facebook ads. You kind of got your typical budget, you've got your template, you kind of do, kind of put that formula together, run the ad, and you're going to sell some tickets, and you've got some decent reporting that's going to tell you this ad sold this many tickets, and with attribution windows and things like that. Now, with some of the privacy shifts we've seen where people can opt out of this kind of tracking, we have less visibility into who's buying these tickets. So using things like first-party data as a tool in our marketing strategy to help us reach better people, market the funnel, if you will, in terms of like kind of folks that are in that awareness phase all the way down to conversion phase. We have to kind of relearn how to use some of these tools, because I think historically we maybe felt a little bit spoiled with how good the reporting was and how well the platforms worked. So I think that's part of the reason why we're hearing about it more and more nowadays, is because we have this shift that we're living in now.
Yeah, great points, and thanks for the kind of overview on that for folks that may not have been super familiar. I think it's funny because I feel like traditionally, the traditional marketing efforts were touch points that you didn't have the ability to track from a digital perspective. Obviously, I'm talking years ago now. We've lived in a more digital age in the last several years for a while, but it almost feels like to some degree it's shifting back a little bit more of using digital tools, but in a little bit more of a traditional approach. I'd love to hear, Tyler, maybe kicking it over to you at a venue level. From my experience in talking both with clients and just also my past experience marketing shows, I think it's fair to say that first party data in terms of knowing your ticket buyers, as far as getting, capturing that email when they purchased, you have the ability then to send those email news blasts out, remind them of what shows are coming up. What are ways that you're really seeing that use of first party data at a venue level? And obviously, I think it's safe to say that those are generally a lower hanging fruit in terms of actually converting ticket buyers, because they've actually purchased from you in the past. But are there any insights or kind of takeaways that you would speak to in terms of first party data at the venue level?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the most important thing, and I'm sorry, I think just gathering my thoughts real quick, the most important thing, and I think that Courtney brought up, is that the digital platforms, with the increase in privacy, with the increase in the new iOSs, has absolutely made it so that tracking and finding out who is coming from those platforms is a little less one-to-one. For example, you don't know, quite frankly, that this one ad sold 20 something tickets and that you got this amount of gross out of it. You kind of have to expand a little bit and look at the overall trend of what's happening in that campaign flight. So for example, if you run Facebook ads, you used to understand that this Facebook ad, this Instagram ad sold exactly 13 tickets at $57, and therefore you got, whatever that math adds up to. But now it's a lot more of, okay, over this span of 2 to 3 weeks that we were making a push, we had, a couple of emails go out, we had Facebook, and we were running a strong organic social campaign. And in that overall time period, we saw, a certain number of tickets get sold. And you might not be able to attribute it, exactly back to Facebook, or exactly to a radio ad, or exactly to an email, but overall that it's working. But in terms of how we use first party data, yeah, it is sort of the low hanging fruit, but it's also the most efficient, right? When someone buys a ticket to a show and they get added to our email list, the very next week they're getting the newsletters and with, featured shows for this weekend, or our new announcements, or our new on sales. And they're able to then, they just had a great experience. So hopefully they click on the site and see, or click through the email and see. But then even if they don't go ahead and buy one ticket, well, then they're on your website. So as Courtney mentioned, you can, you know, track them via pixels and create that audience where you're then able to go and, you know, send ads to someone who's been to your site. So then that's another touch point. And then they're in your first party data in 2 points. So they're getting an email, they go to the website, and now they're getting some, you know, ads on Instagram or Facebook. And then maybe we hit them up, you know, the week of the show, and, you know, maybe that then is their 5th or 6th time seeing or hearing about the show. So then that's maybe when they convert the ticket and go ahead and buy one. But yeah, I think using first party data has become, it's definitely, as a venue level, it is the most important thing that we do, making sure that we're reaching the right people who have been here and know that we have a good time at our shows. And then from there, we start to, you know, figure out how we can get more people that aren't in our system to buy a ticket. And then they join our system, and we get to do the whole cycle over again.
Yeah, thanks for that. And you know, it leads me to kind of thinking, and obviously, Chris, I want to get your perspective on this too, because you're approaching it a little bit more from the artist centric perspective, and how you're capturing that, especially when these artists are going out and playing, you know, multiple venues on a 15, 20 day run, whatever it may be. But I mean, you know, maybe starting with you, Chris, like what are ways that you're using maybe that are maybe unique? I know a lot of us probably are familiar with a lot of kind of the easiest way to capture that first party data, but are there anything that your teams or artists are doing that are kind of maybe outside of the normal scope of just the standard, like sign up for our email address? What are you kind of doing to create new ways of capturing that first party data so you can continue to have those conversations more directly with the fan?
Yeah. Well, to start, I think that this industry is a unique one in the sense that from the artist perspective, we don't own a lot of our sales funnels. So we don't own the venue website or the ticketing platform. We don't own the Spotify, or any of the DSPs. The only thing we do own is our merch store, right? And sometimes not even. So from the data capture perspective, it can be a little bit more difficult, which makes it even more important to have that first party data from an artist side, so that we can directly communicate with our fans, because we can't as easily say, oh, well, I know that all of these people bought a ticket in Nashville last time. If we have a different promoter, we can't just send those people an email, right? Same with like, oh, well, I know they listen on Apple Music. Well, that doesn't matter because you can't talk to them. So just as a general strategy, we are constantly trying to figure out ways that we can increase or just continue to capture that first party data. So I think that leads to that question of like, what are some unique ways that we do it? Obviously, contesting. People love free stuff, or at least the opportunity to get free stuff. So either partnering with a brand sponsorship and giving away a pair of, whatever, something quality item, or a signed guitar, or this or that. People do love tickets. That is a huge driver in our signups. So either sign up to get the pre-sale code, or after everything's on sale, sign up to enter to win a free pair of tickets. And that's a great way that we build remarketing audiences for those specific shows, because if you have 1,000 people that put their email in wanting to win a free pair of tickets, maybe 25% of those folks will be willing to buy them. So, and typically we're running ads to promote that locally. We have some passive capture. We've been moving to some folks over to OpenStage, which is a CRM tool specifically built for artists, and using like the link in bio tool that prompts folks to sign up, or pushing pre-saves, which also is a sign up form. Yeah, lots of different ways that we're trying to come up with reasons for people to join the mailing list, or give us their phone numbers.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are you using SMS? I hear a lot of folks kind of
moving in that direction for obvious reasons. But
Yeah.
it sounds like that's something that you are kind of using already, Chris.
Yeah, I would say, I think just generally for all marketing things, you have to communicate with people where they are. So, email, SMS, Instagram, the broadcast channel, wherever people are, you should be communicating with them. I personally think that the SMS numbers are a bit inflated. I think that I think people aren't actually reading. The 97%, unless I'm in the small minority of the 3% that don't read every single one of my text messages. I think a lot of people, I think it's becoming pretty spammy. So as much as it is important, I caution that I don't think it's as much of a shoe-in as a lot of the folks who are doing the SMS like to call it. But I'd be happy to be proven wrong.
Well, and I'm curious, thinking about, obviously these are a little bit siloed different areas. Obviously, the artist has the data, and the, excuse me, the management team, you have the data, then the venue has the data that they capture, and then obviously the ticketing has their own piece of data that usually is shared across the venue access points. But I'd love to hear, maybe a little first party experience here of how either Chris, you or Tyler are using, and then of course you as well, Courtney, having represented marketing for some of these festivals and venues, but like, how are you trying to collaborate with those other people? Chris, you at the management level, are you really, sometimes it's hard because there's a lot going on in the world of music. So it might not be as proactively strategic in this method, but, are you doing anything to actually work with the venues across those different data pools and really making sure that you're hitting those multiple touch points and kind of a cross channel strategy, but you're also not doing too much overlap between that marketing effort between what you're doing at the artist level versus the venue level?
Yeah, and I would love to hear what Tyler has to say on that too. I'll also say that personally, I am very happy with overlap. I want people to hear about the show from every single, point, everywhere they look. I want them to know about the show. I don't think you can, go overboard in terms of impressions around a show. I'm not looking for any information on Taylor Swift, and I hear about her all the time. I think it's working really well for her. So any more like any opportunity to get that brand name out there is a win. But I think the best way just to highlight what it would look like is that pre-sale week or couple of weeks. Obviously, we're working together throughout the entire on sale period, but to break it down, typically you have an artist pre-sale, you have the venue pre-sale, you have partner pre-sales with Spotify or this or that, and that's really that moment where you're bringing everybody's data together and saying, you are going to be talking to your people on this day, you're going to be talking to your people on this day, this is how we're going to make sure everybody knows about this. So I think that, yeah, primarily it's over that pre-sale period, and then obviously you hope that everybody's continuing to talk about every show throughout that down period between the on sale and the day of show.
The maintenance time frame there, yeah. A couple of questions coming in, or really just kind of one main question for Courtney here in a moment. But before we jump to that, because there are some dialogue going around the SMS stuff, Tyler, I'd love to hear from you at a venue level, and maybe you as well, Courtney, especially for a little bit of a smaller, I shouldn't say that 1,000-person room is a small cap, but obviously it's different than an arena show. But, what are you doing at that, at a club and theater level, Tyler, to use SMS in your strategy, if at all?
Yeah, we definitely use SMS. It's definitely a piece of the puzzle. I saw some people saying like, how effective could it be? Well, maybe on a one-to-one show basis, it's not the most effective way to do it. Hitting all of your SMS people for a show this weekend, it's kind of the same as hitting your entire newsletter. It's effective and it gets the most impressions, but it might not be the most efficient way. And then you can, lose maybe more unsubscribers or people who just aren't relevant to the show. So you want to make sure that, with SMS, you're hitting the right people and the right people targeting. What we do for SMS is we don't have it as an automatic opt-in because it's very invasive. And as Chris said, it can feel very spammy. We like to make it so people opt in to getting SMS from us, whether it's on our website or when you connect to Wi-Fi. When you come to the Capitol Theater, to connect to Wi-Fi, you need to either enter a telephone number or an email address. And then what we use that for is, as those get added in, we typically use our SMS messaging to help launch pre-sales, to help launch on sales, and to sort of do more awareness marketing for that at the start of a campaign. So for example, like every week we send the pre-sale text out to our group of people who have opted in. We have about 2,000 people. And they get the pre-sale venue codes every week. So it's incentive, and we typically see a high click-through rate because those are people who have indeed opted in and want to receive the text messages from us. So that's how I found that we use it most effectively, is by hitting the people who want to be getting sent text. Because I know, just from personal experience, for a while I was getting, I think, 20% off Bed Bath & Beyond like every single day. And, I was like, wow, this is not useful to me, and I'm done. And I don't think I went back to Bed Bath & Beyond. But I don't want that to happen from the Capitol Theater. I want people to have a good experience, and, they come to the venue, they're on Wi-Fi. Yeah, I'll get a text. And then, the next week it just so happens their favorite band is coming through, and here's the password to see them a day early before the general on sale. So that's how we use it. We make sure people are opted in, and then we also give them an incentive to be opted in.
Yeah, I love that. And I think in a world where, at least, I'm based in Charlotte, it's not the largest music mecca by any means, but there's a lot of shows happening week in and week out. And sometimes I miss shows that you don't see the announce for whatever reason. So, some of that more direct opting in, if you're a fan of music, is going to give you the ability to be able to access those tickets at the first announce point, as opposed to after it's already sold out if it's a busy show. Courtney, I'd love to hear your thoughts on SMS. Obviously, you've probably seen it applied across maybe more scale at the ticketing level, but any thoughts to that, and maybe ways that you've seen it used with some of the clients you work with?
Yeah, I do think that a lot of, I think the three of us really share a lot of similar sentiments on kind of really being mindful of, timing and frequency when you use SMS. We have had situations in the past where some people get really excited to use it, and they kind of want to use it as like this last ditch effort, but because it can still feel a little invasive, and it's still, it's been around for a little while, but it's still like a relatively new form of marketing. It's not the same thing as your email, right? So we want to be mindful of when we are communicating with those SMS users. So a lot of what we recommend, and a lot of our teams, like kind of core strategy, it's not rocket science, but it's really just leaning into the organic behavior of your ticket buyers. And when you anticipate those, when you anticipate sales to increase, when you know that they're going to decrease, that event life cycle, you're on sale, then your maintenance and your close, that kind of stuff. So leveraging something like SMS to boost some of the, natural, reactions that you are anticipating at those key times. So using it as something to help boost a pre-sale, help boost an on-sale, but maybe not something that, when tickets aren't really selling in the maintenance period, it's kind of like, oh, well, let me just blast everyone really quick about this show. That might not be the most effective way to use it. So a lot of what we see folks do, in terms of a marketing approach, is kind of leveraging it at key times in your event life cycle, and being selective and mindful of when you use it, how you use it. But it's also a really good post-purchase, tool as well. So thinking some of our festivals, or maybe some of our larger events, if you have a group of folks who've bought tickets to a specific show and the door times changed, or something like that. It's a way to communicate with people post-purchase about kind of like day of show, events, or a show's been canceled, kind of like logistical information. We've seen some people use it, but again, marketing SMS, it's a little bit, tricky. So sometimes those things are better. Like if you have an app, using push notifications for that kind of thing might work better. But yeah, that's typically kind of the way that we typically recommend using it. Really leaning into your event life cycle is kind of our core recommendation with that. Kind of like to what these guys were saying too.
That's cool. I just kind of thought of a strategy as you were talking about that, Courtney. Chris, at like an artist level, you could offer some type of merch bundle pack as like a giveaway, right? And that you mentioned a little bit, you talked to contesting, but even as part of that flow, if somebody buys a ticket, maybe it's a post-purchase offering that then gets texted out with a link that Tyler's texting out to somebody that just bought that said, hey, if you share this link, and if they're a trackable link or some way, I don't know what different tools there are to do this, but all of a sudden it's allowing a little bit of that word of mouth marketing to take place. If they share that link to 5 people, they're automatically entered to win a merch bundle or something like that. But it just kind of, I know that adds more work to everybody's plate, but in terms of obviously scaling up the conversation around that show and the buzz, that could be something that could be really unique, I think, in that that is also an incentive to be on somebody's SMS list, because you get those special kind of perks, right? There's a question here that I think leads us a little bit back to talking a little bit more about first party data is in terms of tracking, not necessarily as far as ways to capture and continue a conversation. But Wes from Monqui Presents was asking you, Courtney, what tactics or strategies are you using to hone in on the broader data sets that we're now seeing? Any thoughts on like UTM links, UTM parameters? I think that the iOS 17 updates are going to maybe cause a few issues with some of the tracking links and even the UTM, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Hi, Wes. Good to see you, I guess. But no, those are really, really good questions. And I think that this is definitely something that we wanted to spend some time talking about today as part of this, because in addition to some of the shifts that we've seen with privacy, we're also seeing, platforms like Facebook, like Google, they're kind of shifting their ad stack and leaning more and more into AI. Like if you're in Facebook nowadays, you're seeing all of their Advantage Plus audiences and delivery and everything like that. They really want you to lean into their algorithm. And what we've seen is, using some of those tools can be effective, but there's also this element of making sure that we're still leveraging the data that we have and we know works well for us too. So complementing some of those broader targeting options like, an Advantage Plus audience in Facebook with limited detailed targeting, also because Facebook has removed so much detailed targeting. And some of us venues that we're working with, they don't have bands that are even options to list in detailed targeting anymore. And then you have to kind of go genre, but then also genres are kind of like, what is it? Is this soft bubblegum pop or is it, gentle? There's like that kind of realm too. So it's like, it's not all like one for one. You can't just say like, this is a rock show. So that's been a huge challenge. So leaning into the algorithm in that sense and taking advantage of how these platforms are changing is good. And I do think that Facebook's API or their AI, not API, Facebook's AI is really good. Their algorithm is really good. I think TikTok is gonna, maybe change the game a little bit in that sense too, because they also have a really good algorithm. But what we've seen is when we get out of the way, we give Facebook the tools, the demographics to use, it does a good job. And the way that we can determine success now with limited tracking is going to be with things like lookalike audiences based off of our custom audiences. So based off of our first party data, people who are similar to my email list, to these past ticket buyers, to my Facebook followers. If you're doing artist dark ads, people similar to the artist followers, things like that. Using lookalike audiences and then also using your retargeting data. So you kind of have these 3 groups of people, really broad, similar to, and then my first party data. And our team will use UTMs to track all of those things. I think Google Analytics and using a tool like that and using UTM tracking is super helpful for us to determine success. Now, your attribution windows are not going to be great. A lot of times it's going to be that last click. So anyone who saw that ad clicked and then purchased in that same session, that's not going to be a very many people. We want to decide, do I want friends to go to this thing with me? things like that. We typically in this space, it's not always going to be a direct purchase whenever you see that thing. So you still get a general idea, but you also have a general idea of like what the response rate looks like, what your engagement rate looks like. And if you're running kind of a flight of campaigns that are going to go kind of from the on sale through the close, whether that's the whole time or whether that's kind of sporadically here and there, you can use a tool like UTMs to track success. You can integrate that with your ticketing partner and they can help bring revenue data into your Google Analytics account. And that can help you get a full picture, but you can also compare over time. Is my engagement rate going up in these ads? Is it dropping? To help you know, are you targeting the right people? Is Facebook doing what it says it's doing in terms of finding me my lookalikes, finding me my interest ads? So we use them and we kind of we break everything out by campaign, by source, medium, and then also content. So if I'm doing an artist dark ad, I can add that in there too. So I can kind of do my, dissecting in my analytics account to see everything. So big fan of UTMs.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, we having seen at the Foundy level, having seen challenges, of course, with true attribution and just tracking conversions in general across the many different ticketing platforms. We implemented a UTM. You can build a UTM right into your campaign build. So you drop your destination URL in, which would be a ticket link. And then right there, instead of having to go to like a UTM provider, build that out and then take the link over, you can all do it right in your Foundy ad, which is great. And for those that are on the call or that are listening that may not be familiar with our ad offering, we don't really touch social media ads. So we're reaching people across display networks and connected TV and streaming video. But I think that kind of leads to an interesting segue. I mean, John, I see you had a question about Seated, and I know Chris responded, Seated.com. I've poked around with Seated. I personally haven't really used it. I know it's similar to Bandsintown from my experience, but I think obviously using any tools that are at your disposal that can help you capture data are going to be valuable as long as it's something that you have time to kind of lean into. But Chris, do you want to speak to your experience with Seated before we move on to the next topic?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just in short, they do work very similarly, Seated in Bandsintown or Songkick, as a way to display all of your tour dates on a website. I think Seated is the best one in terms of user interface. Bandsintown will send you to Bandsintown and you have to log in before it'll send you to a link. Seated does not do that. They just send you to the link. So from just a user perspective of selling tickets, I think that streamline, less clicks, it's going to turn into more ticket sales. They live in the pre-sale space, so you can run pre-sales through them as a third-party ticketing platform. They handle the sign up. So people sign up directly into Seated and then it's automated. They get a text with a code. People can pre-add their credit card and everything like that. So the checkout is pretty seamless. So I know depending on the venue, how they're willing to work with them or not, but from a platform, regardless, I do think it's the best one doing what they're doing. So if you're not using Seated on your website, definitely use Seated because it's the best one.
Nice.
I will say we've worked with people in the past that have used Seated, and they've been great about giving us as kind of the marketing team some of that data that we can use in our targeting. So that's first party data that they're collecting kind of for them, but if they're willing to share it with you, and it feels like most of the time that they are, typically we'll get that from artist management teams. It's not always going to be the venue. But when we're in those scenarios, it's been super helpful to help, kind of enhance some of our retargeting audiences that we're using in email efforts too.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that context. Well, I think before we start to get to where we run out of time, I also wanted to shift into some of the conversations around, using strategies to use the data. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about attribution and then how you're capturing some of that first party data. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about paid ads and how they work into that overall approach of not only collecting the data, but obviously ultimately selling more tickets. And Courtney, you kind of led that in the beginning when you brought up, the shift in the attribution and conversion tracking and maybe the approach being a little bit more holistic in terms of having that omni-channel or every channel touch point. But Tyler, let's hear from you to start out at the venue level. Kind of where's your head at in terms of paid strategy? I know sometimes some shows at your level, you may not have a huge budget. So, what are you thinking about in terms of outside of that organic email push, SMS push? What are you doing on the paid front to try to fill those funnels and not only sell more tickets, but collect more user data?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the real answer is that it totally depends on the show and the artist playing, right? And it depends. So, for example, at the Capitol Theater, we kind of have sort of, I guess, like three different styles of artists that come through. We have a lot of really great tribute and classic rock acts, and those are, those people typically have small budgets and they have, a very direct fan base. If you have a Led Zeppelin tribute coming through, then you're going to spend, and you only have a very small budget, then you're going to put the majority of that to digital marketing, because we've built up that first party data, right? So the fact that we've had Robert Plant, the fact that we've had like Nick Mason, the fact that we've had members of the bands who are tributing, who the tribute acts are played, we can hit all those people, and we know that they're going to come through. If it's, let's say it's the actual artist themselves and the budget's a little bit bigger and they're played on classic rock radio or just radio a lot, then our budget is going to shift a little bit more to radio and a bit more print and billboards and a bit more of a traditional style of marketing, because that's where the fans are. But then I guess sort of where we usually are is that sort of more modern band with a modern audience, and for them it's a balance between sending a good chunk of Facebook and Instagram and meta advertising, and then layering in on top of that programmatic and web display, and then seeing where we can fill in terms of editorial partners, whether that's a Relics magazine or a Jam Base or a Live for Live Music or Do NYC, or just a place that covers music in the area. Those people are sort of supplementary to our first party data, right? So I know for me, I'm sort of thinking, is this an early buying crowd or a late buying crowd? And that kind of determines my split of how much I'm going with the on sale versus the close. If I know that it's a late buying band, I might save 80% of the budget for the closing, and the management knows that that's the case. So they say like, yes, this makes sense. Let's work with it. But if it's an artist that I know people need to, buy tickets and make plans and get babysitters and dinner reservations and stuff, then I'm going to go with a broader, more awareness style campaign in the beginning, and then hone in as I get more data as to what's actually working. And that's really kind of how I approach it. I feel like that was a little bit vague, but
well, we know in this world,
Yeah.
it obviously show by show, or it could be completely different strategies based on what the audience demographic is. Chris, knowing that you've worked with artists that are, the Devin Gilfillians of the world, who have a pretty good awareness about them, but also haven't necessarily done their own headlining tour up until this year. What are you thinking about at the artist level from a paid strategy standpoint to maybe supplement what the venues are doing? Because I know generally the venues are going to control most of that show budget, but how are you thinking about it for anybody out there that's really more on the artist side than they are the venue side?
Yeah. Most of my clients, we do spend money on our shows in addition to what the promoter is spending. So from the ad buying side of things, it's typically primarily just digital, but there have been times where I'll throw a billboard up, or we'll print posters and send them out, or activate a street team. Devin specifically, that was, we saw there was still a lot of weight in radio. The markets where radio came on board and was really strong, the tickets were doing really great. And then you could just tell the ones that radio wasn't on board for. So I think that is still a viable strategy. And then obviously our owned media, our first party data, sending geo-targeted emails, geo-targeted SMS blasts, using socials, the organic side of socials, talking about the tour, either, individual shows, IG stories or that kind of thing, or the tour as a whole. So we really try to come at it from all angles. And again, just trying to, wherever people are, get in front of them and make sure that they're aware of the show. Because the worst is when somebody comments after you play and it's like, I didn't know. And you're like, how did you not know? Like, we did so many things to make sure you would know. So I still miss it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there in terms of the thought of, in the past, historically, to Courtney's point, like right when the kind of shift from traditional took place within the industry, not from an overarching, but more from when I think the music industry really leaned hard into digital. It really shifted immediately into Meta, because that's where all the ticket buyers were. But I think as we've seen these other social platforms, and then also just the inundation of content, some people were spending less time on those social platforms too. So finding ways, creative ways, whether that's a street team, whether it's billboards, whether it's radio or programmatic, or places to reach people outside of social, has never been more important, I think, in many ways, because for so long we could rely on social as just the way to reach people. But to kind of circle it back to you, Courtney, I wonder a little bit about how, what you've seen at like a maybe festival level, how some of the data gets shared across, or are you at a ticketing level, I guess, like making those recommendations? How much data do you all allow or enable your customers to use and access, or maybe even is there the ability to kind of create a data marketplace for you to say, hey, we have all these ticket buyers that are buying all these other events. We can help you as a venue to also market to those people, even though they don't fall within said venue's first party data. Is that something that you can do at a ticketing level, or is that something that you do?
Yeah, eTix is, our core value is kind of data ownership for our clients. So our clients own their own data, and we're also a little bit different in the sense of we don't use data from client A to help sell tickets to client B. It's all very kind of, siloed in that way, because for us, our goal and kind of our strategy and approach is to help our venues and help our clients build up their own databases. So there are a lot of different tools that our system has to help reach more fans and collect more data outside of just those people that are purchasing tickets. We have different kind of data capture tools, whether that, they land on an eTix page and that show is sold out or it's not on sale yet. There's an email capture tool there and things like that, kind of within the system, multiple checkpoints that can help our clients build their database outside of just people that are purchasing tickets. Obviously, that's key, but then, I think this group of people that show interest is also really beneficial too. So there's that piece kind of from the ticketing company, kind of like our organization's goals and values in terms of, our clients owning their own data. And then, there's the Rock House piece, which is kind of my team that can help our clients really take the data that we've been collecting in eTix and then implement that into their marketing approach, and also could get even more data outside of just ticket buyers, right? But at the end of the day, it's all kind of boils down to our purchasers, our fans, who's coming to these shows. And so that's a huge thing. And then in festivals is kind of an entirely different thing, because you've got fans of the artists that go to the festivals, but then you also have fans of the festivals. So that's kind of there's some strategies that we use to kind of talk to both of those people to ultimately help sell out a festival, and that kind of thing. But
cool. Yeah, thank you for that. A few questions coming in here, which is great because we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's start with Tyler. A couple of questions for you. We've got Anthony who's asking, and maybe you start with Lynn, who actually starts with, what's your typical budget per show? And, you talked a little bit to it, but do you spend on all your shows or only as needed? And then the kind of, I think, second part to that question could be Anthony's, what could you explain or elaborate a little bit more on how you're currently using or running programmatic?
Yeah. Typically, budgets for our venue range from about 1,000 to 2,500. If there's a artist that we know that's coming through, that's going to have, that requires a lot of radio buying, a classic rock artist, for example, then my budget might get pushed up. I've seen it as high as $5,000. And really, for me, I spend money on almost every single show, unless we kind of are all in agreement that it's an underplay and it's gonna be a blowout. For example, we had 2 nights of Brandi Carlile acoustic last year. She normally plays rooms 10 times the size of ours, so for that we knew that spending money wasn't necessary. But on the other shows, we typically do, and we run in that on-sale pre-sale campaign. We will typically run either boosted posts on the announce if the targeting interest that Meta provides are good, or we'll create a reach ad on Meta. And that way we're just blasting it to as many people as we can. And then what we'll do for the on sale is we'll switch that into a sales or conversion sales ad. And then that's kind of very typical for every show. Chris, maybe you can speak to this, but agents and managers, knowing that Facebook and Meta still has decent tracking compared to the rest, they still do want to see, a solid portion go to that artist, depending, of course, every time. And then for programmatic advertising, it depends on the show again, but what I've found is really good is introducing programmatic advertising through Foundy specifically during the maintenance campaign, because during that downtime of the show, you're sort of starting to get the word out again, builds up into when you're going to start hitting them with everything. But what I like with Foundy is that you're able to create that retargeting audience. So for the maintenance period, I will, I'll go a little bit lighter, just try to get as many impressions sort of as possible. And then, that does 2 things. One, it creates our retargeting audience through Foundy, and it also sends people to our website, creating more first party data so that on the close, as we're coming in with, the stronger push with our, Meta, our radio, our programmatic, that way we're loading in the retargeting from the people who clicked on the ads, and they're getting hit on Foundy with those same banners and display ads. But then also we created a retargeting audience using our pixel from our Facebook website, making a Facebook audience using our pixel on our website, and adding that into the campaign so that people who maybe were on the fence are seeing that ad, a 6th, 7th time. And that'll make them, hopefully get on, we're on Ticketmaster, go on to Ticketmaster and buy a ticket. In terms of when are targeted ads most effective, I think it's definitely in the beginning and, that initial on-sale pre-sale campaign. And then about 3 weeks out for that closing campaign, as we start to see, tickets on the upsale. That's really when they are most effective in terms of, the cost per acquisition of buying a ticket.
Cool.
Yeah, and then email is just always effective if you can use it. That's just something to always just layer in. It's pretty much always going to get a return.
Yeah, and Anthony, to go a little further on so Foundy's our ad offering is generally, it's all programmatic. So it is display banners, but it's built on a programmatic platform, which is bidding in real time across multiple ad exchanges to get that kind of low cost and impression. And what Tyler was referring to is actually, we have an impression based remarketing audience. So when Courtney was referring to a funnel, a lot of folks use Foundy as that top of funnel, reaching people across outside of social media that may not already be familiar or engaged with that artist or the venue at that purchasing level. You can run that initial kind of what we call a prospecting campaign, build up an impression-based audience, you can actually remarket to them even though they haven't clicked into your funnel yet. And by funnel, I mean like clicking into the art or the venue website that you would then remarket to. So then you can continue to have those touch points across display networks. Once they do click to find out a little bit more, now you're capturing them in that funnel. Use your social media marketing strategies to stay in front of them as you're closing out, get them engaged in the conversation, hopefully posting and responding to comments, those types of things. So yeah, I think, my approach, having come from the background of promoting shows, or both promoting and marketing shows, is it's nice to be able to have multiple touch points and also not rely solely on social or solely on traditional or even solely on programmatic. I know we're getting up against it. Andy with Mary Moore Live up there in Seattle. How you doing, bud? Question here. I think this might be a little bit more geared towards either any of you really, but do you feel like as if the management team's running ads from the artist perspective, and obviously the venue's also spending money, at what level do you communicate and kind of strategize so that you don't feel like maybe you're stepping on each other's toes, or you're not, you're not kind of doubling up the efforts and you're making sure you're either reaching a different audience, or if you're reaching the same audience, you're at least coming at them with maybe different content so it doesn't feel too repetitive? Anybody feel free to jump in, whoever wants to chat on that. But.
Sure. And I was just going to reply to what Tyler had mentioned about when I'm like looking at the marketing proposals and or what the plan looks like. But I'm most interested in just a diversity of strategy, and not just like we're only doing, ads on Instagram. It's like we've got to, I want to make sure that the email list and all of these different components are in play. Generally, though, I don't think most shows are going to be running with a budget that can hurt the algorithm or get in the way of each other. There's so many people that are in a target audience that are being targeted all the time. Now, like $2,000 over the course of a couple months isn't gonna step on anybody's toes, because there are people who are going to be running multiple thousands of dollars a day in a market. So I'm not too concerned about it. But if we are running into, if the sales are lower and we're talking about adjusting budgets or this or that, we'll probably coordinate a little bit more closely on either having one account run it all, so it's more I guess accurate, or so that it's more efficient if all the money is coming from one place. But that's usually the only time when we'll really bring that conversation up.
I think at that point you have a little more control over frequency, right? If it's all running from the same account, you can tell how many times those people are seeing that same piece of creative. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I was
just gonna say, if an artist is coming to the table with like an extra $100 or something per show, it's really not gonna change all that much, like from a frequency standpoint. So.
Yeah, and I would just add before Tyler to Andy's question, I don't think more budget going into Meta or to the advertising platforms I don't think it's ever really going to hurt the algorithm from a standpoint of competing ads. There's so many people out there and so many impressions to be served that I don't know that I've ever actually seen it be that I've ever seen it be that competitive, I guess, to where it hurts any type of ad strategies. But Tyler, did you have any point you wanted to make?
Well, I was going to say, a lot of times in the beginning when, we're getting ready to put a show on sale, an artist management team or an agent will come through and they'll say, hey, are you all set with, your advertiser access so that you can run dark ads from an artist page through, like the Venue Meta account, so that they'll be like, hey, are you all set with it? Here's copy. Since that's going to come from the artist page, they want to make sure that it's all coming from the artist voice. Or if they don't want you to go, adding the page into your system, they'll say, hey, can you do a $300 to $500 carve out for us to run ads on our own from our page? We're going to run them from this time to this time. And then I'll say, awesome. And then that's when the conversation starts. Okay, cool. Do you want me to run from the Venue page at that time, or no? Do you want to just run on the artist and see how that works? So it's sort of in the beginning, we kind of decide how that's going to work before we go on sale and launch into it all. Otherwise, you can get into a situation where you're kind of like backtracking and trying to figure out who's done what on what budget, and making sure the show costs are all in line across all the parties is pretty important.
Nobody's spending the extra money. And one thing I'll just mention to that, Tyler, it sounds like most of the folks out there are promoters and not necessarily management or at the artist level. But for anybody that is at the artist level, if you're doing that and you're having the venue run, they're running the dark artist ads, you can use a Foundy Smart Link with that ticketing. You can tell Tyler, hey, you're running this from our artist page. Here's the copy. Instead of just sending them directly to the ticket link or to your website, use this Foundy link that basically redirects to the ticketing site. Tyler's still going to get that first party data because he has his pixel on the ticketing site. But when a consumer clicks the Foundy link that sends them to the ticketing site, you as the artist manager can collect that data too. So you're obviously, if it's coming from Meta, you're getting that kind of engagement audience on the social side, but then you can build your audience up through Foundy that you could remarket on the display banner side too. But I want to be mindful of our guest time. Obviously, the folks that have joined out there, thanks everybody for being here. I think this seems like people found some value in it. I really appreciate Courtney, Chris, Tyler, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And Taylor's saying with 25 plus shows on the week before the holiday, she's not the only one. Yeah, good luck to everybody out there. And yeah, thanks for your time today. And if we can help you out in any way, please reach out to us. I'm sure I can speak for the rest of the folks on this call that if you have any questions to any of them, feel free to reach out on maybe LinkedIn or something as well. But thank you, everyone. Thanks to the presenters here. Appreciate you guys so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Cheers. Everybody have a wonderful day.
We'll see you.